So welcome back, folks. I'm going to talk about some warehouse stuff today. I'm even dressed to work in the warehouse today. Back earlier in my career, when I worked at Alford Media, we quickly outgrew the first building that we were in, moved into the second building. Later on, we outgrew that space, moved to the third building, which lasted almost 25 years, which is remarkable, but it was big enough to allow them to grow successfully. So one of the questions I was asked as operations manager about moving into a new building is, what is the upside financially for warehouse operations if we had a bigger space? What would we do if we had more space? What would we do less of? What could we do more of? In other words, what could we claw back from the business in terms of money? And that was an interesting exercise for me because I just started making a list of all the things that were problematic through the course of a day, like, missing equipment, can't find a critical piece of cable. Our truckloads were horrible. Our gear was, a mess because we were pulling together so haphazardly from lack of space. We're having a load truck to make room to pull more stuff to go on the truck, right? We had unreturned sub rentals. It didn't happen a lot, but every once in a while, it's like, oh my goodness, we found this buried in all of the equipment. And the other thing I said it would give us is time to prep. Well, guess what? That's the one thing I didn't need. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Welcome to your weekly dose of uncommon sense, helpful insights, and tough love. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. The Intentional Success Podcast comes to you through the generous support of Mertz Crew.
Mertz Crew helps top AV companies book quality AV freelancers. Your choice, your rates. We handle contracts, insurance, and payments. You save time, cost, and reduce risk. Start today at mertzcrew.com.
Now onto the show.
So many times when I sit down with an owner, start talking about their business, listen to their history, there comes a point in time where they've reached the warehouse they're in now in that story. And for many people, they think this is their terminal warehouse. This is the last building they were ever going to need. And, there's some logic in that you want to size your overhead for the business you expect to have, not the business that you hope to become. And so we don't want to have too much real estate if we're not a company that's big. But sometimes you have to have room for growth and you have to have room to flex. And so there's some misconceptions about what warehouse space needs to do for folks. And that makes me want to talk about it today because I think we're thinking about warehouses incorrectly. We're looking at warehouses as a storage space when in fact, only half of your warehouse is storage. So think about that. Take a look at the footprint you have now. How much stuff is stored in there? How much of the floor space is taken up or the volume is taken up by storage versus how much is taking up of the essential work that you have to do every day to be successful and make money, right? Wouldn't take long. Walk out in the warehouse, figure out what that is. So I've often, when I teach operations, I talk about operational processes, and I always start at the beginning of the operational process, which is in the warehouse, and it's at the back of a truck, and it's when we unload an order that is coming in. It could be a van picking up a sub rental or bringing back a delivery. It could be a tractor trailer rig bringing back a major show. When we unload, that is when operations begins. Okay? If we don't get the beginning right, the rest of the process is going to be more difficult. So the first thing we do when we unload the truck is we QC all of the equipment. We scan it in, we check, inside the cases to make all the parts and pieces in there. We restore anything that needs to be restored. We close it up. We put a zip tie on it. We update the label and we put it back on the shelf. We do that for every single item of the truck. Some things need to go to repair. Some things need to go to deep QC, which can take place later, but it's off the warehouse floor. So we get it off the warehouse floor. But everything else we can QC on the spot and get it back to the shelf as quickly as possible. Now, there's iterations of that. And, if you have a giant, if you have a 50,000 square foot warehouse and your departments are a golf cart right away, you can restage things into other areas. But the point is, you're moving them in, and until that truckload is put up, everything else needs to stop for those people that do that kind of work. Other work will continue, but this is the highest priority in operations. Get the incoming inbound load reconciled, put up, scan, sent to repair, subrentals return, everything cleared, and then you can get back to what everybody thinks is the most important thing you do in the warehouse, which is prep a show. So when I ask owners, why do they think they want a bigger warehouse? Almost all of them say, well, if we had a bigger warehouse, we could prep orders sooner. Well, why do you want to prep orders sooner? So we could find mistakes sooner. So we know what's missing sooner. So why don't you know what's missing? Well, the computer kind of tells us, but until we touch it, we don't really know. So what you're telling me is you need a bigger warehouse so that you can prep multiple shows sooner, so it's easier for you to find what's missing. In other words, your prep time should take longer. How is that going to help you grow? So what happens if you have 20% growth next year? And instead of having 3 bays full, you now have 5 bays full of shows getting prepped all the time. Where's the incoming shows go? Where does the inbound equipment go? How do you clear all of this out? So there's some fundamental flaws in the logic. The goal of having a bigger warehouse is to have a bigger working space, and the goal of that working space is to be empty. So when I talk to warehouse managers and when I'm taking these tours, I say, and I'll see their work in progress area. I say, how often is that space empty? Oh, that's never empty. So if it's empty, something's gone terribly wrong. And I'm thinking, no, if that space is empty, something has gone terribly right. The warehouse has no control over the volume of business the company does. They have everything to do with the how well you utilize the resources of that business, because you can make work fill up the time, right? If you start prepping shows a week early because you're not busy, you're just filling up the time. You're not fundamentally gaining anything. What you're doing is you're getting over the mistakes of your warehouse operation that says you can't prep an order in the amount of time it should really take, which might be 3-4 hours, 8 hours max for 99% of the shows that you do. You have a couple of shows a year, might take more time to prep. But shows shouldn't take that long to prep. You're moving QC'd equipment off the shelf, you're scanning it, you're putting it in the pile, you're labeling it, you're getting the next piece. You should be able to do it very quickly. And in my career, this is something that we discovered. Once we got the right amount of space where we had a huge prep area, okay, we didn't use it for prep. We prepped 1 show at a time, maybe 2 max, but we only prepped a show that was going to get loaded that day or first thing the next morning, right? So here's my philosophy, okay? In the warehouse, we want to optimize floor space as much as possible. We want to optimize it for returns, not for prep. If we get our returns done, that yields prep space, okay? But we have to get returns done. Our inbound area has to remain clear. So if another truck comes in, I can unload it at any time. There's always a dock or 2 that is for inbound, and the area behind that is always clear, because I want to turn that inbound equipment as quickly as possible, get it QC'd, get it back on the shelf, and get back to my business of prepping an order more quickly. And it's easier to prep an order more quickly if all the gear is on the shelf. You know exactly where to find it, and we're not scrambling through the cases that just came off a truck, digging around trying to find that one special cable in the bottom of a case somewhere. Okay, it's already been found. It's already put back where it's supposed to be. So you're not prepping an order from un-QC'd equipment, which is ridiculous. You should never have to do that. That means we got our priorities all wrong. So the reason it takes so long for people to prep isn't the lack of space. It's how you use the space. So what does a good warehouse look like? Let me tell you what it looks like. This is the end of the day picture, right? When I get to the warehouse at, it's 5 o'clock, I'm taking my walk through the warehouse before I get in my car to go home, check it on my team. I want to see that all the work in progress, in other words, we're prepping orders that are not loading today, that all the work in progress is organized. It is squared off in the pull area. It's very clear that this is a contiguous pull. Even you could put stanchions around it or put a roll of tape, caution tape around it. But I want to see it squared off. I don't want to see cases sticking out. I don't want to see things appended onto the end of it. I want to see it nice and squared off, intentional, because if it looks like it was intentionally squared off, nobody will touch it. If it looks like this case was just kind of shoved up there, somebody's going to grab it and use it for a table or open it up, take something out of it. So all work in progress has to be organized at the end of the day. All the gear is QC'd and put away, which means all the trucks are unloaded. If a truck comes in at 5 o'clock, guess what? We're staying late. We knew it was coming in. It's on our schedule. We can't act surprised. We know we have to clear that truck and put it in. So all that stuff has to be cleared. All my aisles are cleared. So once all my gear is put up, all of my aisles should be clear. So if I have forklifts that have to get up and down aisles, stock pickers, or just human beings, all the space that should be available is available. That is my end of the day setting, right? Now, of course, we also want to, the floor is swept, the trash is taken out. Many people skip this step because, well, it's not that important. Yes, it is. It's extremely important. This is a mindset. Now, if you've got technicians who are prepping your orders, we have another problem that you and I need to talk about offline, because that will not work. They are not going to take your trash out and they're not going to sweep your floors. They don't belong in warehouse operations any more than your warehouse people should be out doing shows in a ballroom. So your floor is swept, your trash is taken out, and the plan for the next morning is posted. It is not in some warehouse manager's head who's going to get stuck in traffic or find out he has to take his kid to school. It is posted. There's a whiteboard that says Thursday morning, 7 a.m. crew, start here. Right? Very clear. Load this show. Load show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Something very clear, because we need to get started in the morning instead of standing around thinking about all the things that we could be doing and what we'd like to do. What we need to do is actually part of the plan. And if there's no plan for work, there's no point in any employee showing up, or is there? So these are the things that have to happen at the end of the day. What allows this to happen and what makes this work is you carving out as much space, floor space, as you possibly can. It should probably be, if I'm going to pick a number out of the blue because you pressed me to do it, and you are right now, because I hear you say, Tom, how much of my warehouse should be open floor? A third of it. Okay, you got a big house, maybe a quarter of it. A third of your warehouse floor needs to be available for use. Okay, it is work in progress. We can't load. Anybody, you ever tried to load a show into a ballroom that was already full? All the banquets all set up, right? All the centerpieces are in place, and you got to come in and fly truss and hang lights and hang projectors and fly screens and build a stage. You can't do it, can you? Okay, how are you going to prep a show? Oh, well, we'll just prep it. It'll just take us a week. Well, you know what? It will take you a week to load into a ballroom that's not empty. Okay, it takes less time to prep a show if you've got the space to prep it into and you've done all the other work. So what I'm telling you is you don't need 7 days to prep a show. Okay, you probably don't need 7 hours to prep a show. Okay? You're prepping a show from gear that is already ready to be prepped, is waiting to be prepped, into a space that is waiting to receive it. It's getting checked off, it's getting squared off, and then as soon as that order is ready, we're putting it on the truck and getting it out of here, right? We want to be able to prep in the least amount of time available and have things sitting on the floor for no more than 24 hours if we can help it, right? Prepping early doesn't gain you anything. It uses up valuable floor space. So if you know you've got the gear, there's no point in doing it, because it will take just as much time to prep it in 2 days when it needs to go out as it would to prep it right now. But if you prep it right now, you're going to spend 2 days trying to protect that prep from getting cannibalized, getting pushed out of the way, getting knocked around, getting forgotten. All the things that happen to things when they sit around prepped too long. All right. So that's my thoughts on warehouses. I'm pretty militant about warehouses. If you have so much stuff in your warehouse that you don't have a floor space, then you do not have a place to do work. You have a storage unit. Find somewhere to store that other stuff. or chances are you probably just need to throw it away. Right? I've seen some of your warehouses. Okay? Just throw that stuff away. So there you go. That's what I want to talk about today. Thanks for living. Think about the end of the day in your warehouse and what a clean warehouse is that's ready for the work the next day so your crew can go home and sleep at night and you can come back and get all the work done that you need. That's the warehouse goal. You need floor space to do it, and you got to change your mindset about what the most important thing in the warehouse is, and that is to check in, QC, and put away equipment. Job number one. Thanks for listening. Go clean up your warehouses. Bye.
If you liked this episode of the Intentional Success Podcast, please leave a review and don't forget to like and subscribe. This podcast has been brought to you by the helpful folks at Mertz Crew.